Hi, everyone. So excited to be here again, especially with my wonderful guest, Dave Snell, Bill Barkhouse. This is the Drone Show, first episode, and looking forward to comments. Chat's wide open. Love to know who's watching, and even if it's just where you're from, throw your name out there with anything, and we'll recognize you and start building your LinkedIn success story. With that said, the word of the day is drone or drones. And Bill has really got a lot of expertise, but me and Dave have a lot of interest in it also. So hopefully it appeals to everybody in the audience from novice to expert. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave. Dave can give you a little catch up on a little bit of background and also what his first thoughts on drones are. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Don, it's great to be here as always. Just always a fun time that we have. And it's really, as I was thinking about drones for the last week until we had a previous conversation even before today, I thought we were going to go down the business side of this. And my thinking was, do I want to be a drone in a big machine that just does the same old thing? And then I recalled last week that we spoke about drones and the physical drones. And I was very happy to hear that this was the subject for today, not the mindless droning that we can do in a business or working for somebody else. So it was very refreshing thought to go down this path. And as you know, as a private investigator, as a cybersecurity guy, but also as a military, former retired, I'm a retired naval officer. I've looked at drones from the entire spectrum of civilian use to military use. So I'm really excited to talk and learn more about these today.
Well, sounds great, Dave. You're always a positive influence on whatever show title or whoever's on it. So I applaud you for that. So I'll turn it over to Bill. Bill can share a little bit of his background and a little bit about his interest in drones, and love to hear more. Bill?
Well, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank Donald and Dave for this opportunity to be here and with all of you that are tuning in today for this inaugural The Drone Show. If you ever had the opportunity, or obviously you have since you're here, to interact with Don, he is just very, very, very effective at generating some great ideas. And so he had, looked me dead in the eye one day and said, why don't you do the drone show, which I thought was the most interesting thing I'd ever heard. And so that kind of brings us here. My background is very much quite, from an academic point of view, I'm an applied geophysicist. This is a very akin to geophysical engineering as well, and have spent 40 years in that. I come from a family that would be a fourth generation mining family in the minerals business, which would be coal. And then during the great oil embargo in 1973, I was recruited by industry. Houston, Texas, if you will, went under every rock in North America looking for a geologist and a geophysicist. And I was one of those people they found up in the northern part of the United States. And actually at that time, I was doing what's called airborne electromagnetic ground follow-up. I was too young to fly in the PBYs, which are these planes that would fly at treetop level. They'll have their wire coaxial cable that came off the nose of the plane back to the wingtips, and then they tow maybe a mile behind it if they could lift it. And they definitely had a 700 kilowatt generator in the payload. And so they would go out, and what this does, it sends out an electrical conductivity field that we can't see as people, but we can measure it with instruments. And that'll induce, as you fly over the surface of it, a secondary response from massive, like sulfides in this case, associated with copper. And I was working with a very famous Canadian company at that time. But since I was under the age of 18, I guess, when I first started doing this, is that I couldn't fly in the plane itself. So they gave me the dubious honor of being in what they called the ground follow-up. And that was, I thought I'd spend the rest of my life in the field, 28 days on, in the field, just totally remote, just kind of mapping out these locations here. Fast forward here, because I take note of people's comments already, not to drone on. Beautiful word. If you go back and research the word, it has two different contexts. It has the context and the, I'll call it the technical, which are machines that kind of fly up in the air and do all sorts of good things. And then the second context from language is, and its origins are in, I think it's going to be in Dutch and German, would be it's humming. And this is what relates it into the literature and the arts and everything like that. So a repetitive tone. So presently, I've been doing a lot of activity associated with taking the technology, the science, and the engineering and applying it to solve problems that in particular focus areas would be resource exploration and extraction. It would include environmental and infrastructure. And I can have specific examples on that. Another one would be agriculture. And then lastly, munitions. Now those four are out of literally potentially dozens of areas of focus that could be done. And so, but we have focused on this in the context because in a value system, we firmly believe we want to use this technology to help improve and solve problems of our communities and things like that. Let me turn it back over.
Okay, well, that's a pretty cool overview, very comprehensive approach to drones. And, the beauty of this show is typically we just start with any word. Some words are just like empathy, like we had the other day. Also, words that are specific to everybody's interest. I always allude to Harvey, who launched a franchise show and went right to the top, and then followed it up with the franchise brand story show, went right to the top. And by just putting the drone show, it showed up on LinkedIn as number 2 out of 407. When you type in drones, it showed up number 6 out of 310. So it shows up in multiple search engines, really relative to keywords. And most people aren't as simple as the drone show. So they get a little too technical and they lose some of their search value. But before we hand it over to Dave, let's hear some comments. Here's Carrie. Hope we don't just drone away with this show. No, that's not going to happen. Going to make it fun, exciting. Here's Omar M. Omar's a great guy. He runs a show, Zoom Party. Had about everybody who's on this show on. Omar does so much for kids. He's a tutor. And also Zoom Party actually had my grandson on. He won the first prize and I think a t-shirt. So thank you. I've been on. And what's funny about Omar, just last week, he wrote me, he says he's organizing a singing contest on LinkedIn. And before I read any further, I said, well, I'm not a singer. And he says, well, I'd love to have you as a judge, which I can be more judgmental about other people singing than promote my own. So thanks, Omar. This is a great opportunity to see somebody on the sidebar, check out their profile, connect with them, do some networking while you're here, get some valuable takeaways. Here's LinkedIn user. I don't see Dave with any tomatoes to catch up on details. Another funny joke. And here's Kelly. And if you don't know Kelly, she's one of the absolute wonderful, valuable individuals on LinkedIn. And I've gotten to do, since January 19th, we both remember the first show. Last year, we've done over 100 shows together. Kelly's gone on to do her own show, The Awesome Journey, that really supports veterans and first responders, and has really just blossomed since then. So thank you, Kelly. And Kelly will be on the show tomorrow with Jason. So moving back to you, Dave, how have you thought of drones? And I know we talked briefly last week about applications for what you may be able to do with them. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first, Bill, that was an insightful way to get into the geophysics side of how we can use technology. I would have loved to have had a chance to go on a PBY at some point, just to be a sitter on there, just not doing anything. Drones are an interesting technology because I think it, as you alluded to, Bill, a little bit, is the payload that we can put on there, gives us a huge variety. And as a private investigator, I just thought about how I could use drones just a couple of weeks ago, because the target house I was looking at doing some, and I don't know the FAA rules, I'm not going to get into that just yet, but how could I use it? The juices started going. I could fly over the house that's at a dead end and try to get a layout of where the property lines are. What are my avenues of egress and ingress, and okay, what are my planning factors going to be? So that has a massive application for what I can do. And if I want to follow somebody or get images from, I could be down the street, fly it over and say, hey, the guy's home, or she's walking without a walker when she's on a workers' comp case. And, it has multiple applications. And then I also think of it as, from a cyber perspective, I could put a wireless receiver up there, just try to catch whatever connectivity I can get from phones, from routers in a residential area in particular. Or if I really wanted to go a little bit again, I'm not advocating anything unethical, but and at the same time, let's think about a bad guy's perspective of, if I want to jam a signal, I could put that on a drone very easily. Militarily, I can't say if we do that or not now. I have to assume that we are doing something like that in the battlefield. And, I'm alluding to with the private investigation, because my background is intelligence. It just lends itself. I mean, we're using drones today for reconnaissance of areas, as you said, Don, for an offensive methodology. We see videos of Ukraine all the time of bombs being dropped off of a drone. So I look at drones as a good, and with every technology we develop, it can be used for good or for evil, or bad. I won't say evil. And I'll start off with the early part of this conversation with a friend of mine. I'll give him credit, as Herm Haskin, guy I knew, Army officer I knew at the National Security Agency. I think just after he retired in 2008 were the Beijing Olympics. And I want to take this a little bit bigger than just drones. And what did the Beijing Olympics introduce us to? They introduced us to the massive use of drone technology for entertainment purposes. They had that big light show, and Disney's doing this now with Star Wars. Drones just flying all around and making images in the sky for us to see, like fireworks, but they last longer. Okay, well, what's driving that? That's artificial intelligence and the interconnectivity between them. And Herm looked at his wife, and then he called me because I was in Hawaii 6 hours behind him. And he said, oh my God, can you imagine what we can do with this now? They've just made a statement. And everybody's oohing and aahing about the fireworks kind of show. And he's sitting there going, I can see the evil in this. So, a broad spectrum of uses here that I'm seeing for drones, good, bad, how can we use them? But day to day, in the end, there's something fun, there's something useful, and it's entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, I think both of you have really launched the show into a great foundation for continuing to learn and grow and enhance the curiosity out there. And again, like any new technology or existing technology, the ones who take advantage of it and are early adopters are going to get a competitive advantage over the ones who are doing things that are more legacy. And it's also, how do you integrate it? Just like AI with drones, how do you make it a bigger part of what you're already doing, like investigations, like finding pipes that are under the ground that people have to understand where they are. And, what it is it's a vehicle, naturally, but it has so many applications and abilities to do what couldn't have been done without a person and a big plane and a bunch of other support. So it's really made it very cost and time efficient. And I think that's so valuable. And, I think that's so important. So when we look at drones, Bill, where do you see the next horizon?
Well, the next horizon is just going to be just outside your vision there. They call it beyond vision, which is one of the FAA. FAA has set the standard for how Small drones and even commercial drones are used throughout the world, and they have a certain height specification, which is 450 feet. And Dave would know from his global experience, and he's very articulate and knowledgeable, is that many times the regulatory frameworks that you're using in other parts of the world are a result of the initial guidelines that have been determined and defined by the United States. And so that's a good thing. From our history, several decades post-World War, we often set standards, and the standards are picked up, and that helps focus everybody's attention with respect to how to approach these very challenging and complex Earth situations. The next dimension, I think that what you're going to see, and I'm going to take one step back and I'm going to try this. It's clear that when you listen to us, all of a sudden there's a sense that this gets very complicated very quickly, technically, regulatory, government policy, et cetera, safety. But what our organization, Drone Geoscience, is focusing on, and I'm going to try and do this. Think of a concept. Just think of a triangle here, okay? Triangle. And at the apex of the triangle is going to be the sensor. And most people are familiar with drones as those having cameras, okay? And I'll come back to that in just a minute. At the other apex will be the flying, the avionics, the aviation aspect of it. And then at the other portion of it that we integrate, and Don referred to this, we do artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence in itself, besides drones, is pretty scary, But on the other hand, as a trained geophysicist, the fundamentals of this have been around for centuries, and it's in the mathematics. And that's, the field coming out of geophysics. That's how I was exposed to it as a young geophysics student. Now, why am I mentioning this? Okay, so where drones are going to go next is that we're going to see both in two areas, well, all three areas actually, we're seeing daily improvements. Firstly, in terms of the sensors, what we do at Drone Geoscience, and I'm going to make a statement, I don't have any data to back this up. I don't have any expert studies, but I'm going to suggest for our fun is that, 95% of all the drone stories, and everybody has a drone story, is going to have to deal with a drone that sees down onto the surface of the Earth, okay? What we're doing with the geophysical sensors is we're swapping out on the platform, we're swapping out the cameras, and we're putting in geophysical sensors that allow us to see underneath the surface of the Earth, And that is a nascent industry. And so that's one of the directions that this is going, to your question, Donald. First example is in the aspect of sensors. The second thing is in the aviation aspect of it is the payload. And Dave referred to this as well. We can go now and we can get very inexpensive little drones that you can hold in your hand and fly around inside the room and everything like that. But it comes back to an aviation term referred to as payload. And so as we go to better and better drones themselves that have the capability of lifting heavier and heavier payloads, that's when we can put in these geophysical sensors. Right now, we go out and fly, and fortunately, these are very quick surveys. They can be done on the order of minutes, hours, half a day. And so you collect a lot of data, okay? But you're doing it with one measurement at that time, which is that sensor. So where is this going on that dimension? It's going into multiple sensors, heavier payloads, so you get multiple streams of data that you can work in real time, as opposed to having to land the drone, replace the sensors, repeat that, more time, more cost that was being referred to. And then lastly, on the artificial intelligence, is that you can take the artificial intelligence, and we use it in the imaging aspect of it. And so my best example is that no one knows what's underneath where you're sitting. People honestly do not know what's underneath the ground, where they live, where they work, where they drive a vehicle and things like that. We've done studies with the Texas Department of Transportation, for example, in terms of imaging some of the data we had. And we noticed on the image, we just couldn't explain these kind of blotchy features and everything. And suddenly we thought, and we didn't have any way of figuring this out, we said, could that be corrosion on the pipelines underneath that we don't see? And then fate had it that they actually dug up the site And sure enough, we got the metal samples and we think it's corrosion. That opened up a whole new dimension when you can use artificial intelligence to work those models and plug in that data. So 3 examples for each of the 3 dynamics that we're doing in this regard. And again, with the motivation that it can serve all the purposes that we've been discussing today, more preferably towards the good side, to benefit our communities. Offline, I'll check back with Dave and talk about, but yes, you can have thermal sensors in the drones, which will help at least tell you if there's a person present or something that's emitting heat, is present or not. But we'll do that offline. Save that for another story.
Well, I can talk here too on it. We've seen it all on TV. We know that we can.
Right. Yeah.
As you're talking, Bill, it made me think that a couple of things is when we think of drones, we're thinking of these little ones like you point out in our hand, or a little bit bigger than, maybe a desk sized 4 propellers. And I just put it up in my neighborhood. The idea of a drone really isn't new. We've had drones for 50 years. I mean,
yes.
the old drones that the guys used to, I just saw a little meme on Facebook, I think it was, that, Marilyn Monroe was one of the people putting propellers or something on drones that gunners would use back in World War II, radio controlled drones. So we've used this technology for many years. And I think about it in a scalular piece. We're talking about these desk size ones, but even the Predator that we've seen for 30 years and all over the global war on terror, all intelligence, surveillance. My wife is an ISR person for the intel side. She uses these things to track people thermally or electronically. There's a broad spectrum of sizes even that we're talking about here. So the technology is, it's been here for a very long time. I think that we're at the nexus point of the explosion in the last 15, 16 years. I just mentioned, 2008, where it's just going, wow, what are the opportunities? And they're limitless, to your question, Don, of what's the next evolution. We can't really say, because it's only limited by our imagination.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm so catching up with all the information and all the different possibilities. It's just overflowing with importance and value. I want to mention that Jason's with us, even though his LinkedIn picture isn't showing. Good morning to you all. We've actually, I see on the comments, we've got a gentleman from Sri Lanka, Kanchana. Welcome. And he's actually hiring. He's got 21,000 followers, so I guess he is pretty popular. Welcome, everybody. Always encouraging more comments, because it really gives us more context and makes us more relevant, and hopefully creating a lot of wonderful takeaways. And, if you're interested in this and you're aligned with what Bill and what Dave are talking about, feel free to reach out to them and share your interest. Again, this is a way of building your networks that continue to build quality people into them. When we're talking about drones, again, everything that advances everything else that's related to it. So as we're talking about AI and we're talking about payloads and we're talking about sensors, everything's on an accelerated path, and it's really who can put things together. Right? Just like stacking software together, so, and then, there's the hardware side, there's the software side, there's the people out in the field. Most of where these go are a lot of places unpopulated, right? I mean, if you're looking out in places for exploration, I know Bill spent his life traveling the globe in different areas, stationed in different places. And I believe at one point, he was one of the key players in ExxonMobil's future technologies, where he would go out and start thinking 5 years in advance what would happen. I want you to share a little bit about that, Bill.
I'd very much like to. Much of it's still classified by ExxonMobil on the agreements. I retired.
I'm very careful what I say.
Yeah, but I can talk in generalities and profiles. But But I think Don hits on something that's important to all of us, and that's the timing of this, regardless of the organizations we're working from. The marketplace is such that it's always emphasizing things in a very, very short period of time, almost a transaction time on the order of a day. The kinds of questions we're focusing on, it's very challenging, very, very challenging to get investment in terms of dollars in order to do the research. And so maybe it's our love of humanity and our love of science. We put a lot of this out of our own pockets, and it takes a little bit. But the driver continues to be in the electronics, and where the miniaturization, and Dave triggered this, I should have commented on this, and I thank you, Dave, is that's one of the key drivers, is you continue to miniaturize all the components that go into these systems. That reduces the cost, and that reduces what they call the entry barrier, or the barrier of entry. And so that's why some of these things can be accomplished presently. And that's I like that term, explosion of all these different things we're seeing across all different industry sectors. And that's one of the opportunity spaces for artificial intelligence. How do you start to manage all of that data? And they have descriptors that kind of describe from a little bit of data to a large amount of data, to an even larger amount of data. And that's where the artificial intelligence is helping. How do you work with all that data and information?
Yeah, obviously that can be so key, because if you have so much information, how do you distill it, and how do you make it as valuable, and then how do you make it as user friendly to understand and digest it? Because I think that's always a little bit of a barrier, is assuming a lot of people know as much as you do, or starting out at that point, where most people look at drones as fun things. Where they're just flying around their neighborhood or doing things like that. It's pretty fascinating. So Dave, looking at the bigger picture as far as intelligence gathering, cybersecurity, this is another frontier along with those. And it's, going to have more and more broader uses for more and more industries and individuals as it gets parsed out. So what's your thoughts?
Well, as you were talking, Bill, I was thinking of the miniaturization again. And one of the things that I try to help companies with, you bring up, it's going to be a little bit convoluted, but I'll try to bring it back here. Is you said, in my world, from the National Security Agency, intelligence community, Exxon, it's still classified. Okay. So people are trying to protect information, hopefully very well. Most people don't have a good sense of what to protect, and that's where I can help out, I hope. And yet I got to look at it from the other angle, is if I have miniature drones, and I keep thinking drones in the aerial sense, but drones can be, I can put them in a ventilation system. If they're pre-programmed, or if I'm controlling them radio controlled or whatever, the smaller they get, the closer I can get to, and you asked Don about intelligence or cybersecurity, I can get them into places that a human body can't go, whether it's aerial or not, even if it's just outside my window here. With the right sensor package that's miniaturized, they could hear me. They can take my computer system and, whatever's emanating, we used to call it, oh gosh, I can't believe I just forgot. It was a certain kind of emanations you can hear. Keys being typed, you can understand what keys are being hit. Gosh, I can't believe I just forgot what this is called.
Acoustic.
Well, yeah, but there's a whole military program around the emanations, the electromagnetic emanations off a computer, that I can actually. Gosh, I can't believe I just forgot this. I can actually pull off the data without actually touching the computer.
Exactly.
So again, miniaturizing, if I don't know how to protect or what to protect, I don't know how to protect it. Therefore, I can't imagine what the potential threats are. And drone technology, sorry, somebody else. I live right at the end of a runway, sorry. And the A-teams are starting to take a different path this last couple of weeks. But if I can take these technologies smaller and smaller and collect information against somebody without their knowledge, or hack their computers. I can deny their use of their computers or even their Wi-Fi. I personally have, with his permission, I've interrupted my neighbors. I told him I'm going to do a quick attack, and he's like, okay, well,
good neighbor, good neighbor.
it worked, but it didn't come right back up. He had to reset everything over hours. But even that disruption in a business sense, okay, I post, a couple times a week about espionage in the news. Think of corporate espionage, and if I can from a distance take somebody else's systems down, interrupt them at a critical time, even if it's for minutes, that could be millions of dollars. That could be a livelihood for a small business. That's just, I'm thinking of a little bit more of the evil. I'd rather focus on the fun, because I love watching my neighbors play with their little drones when they had them when they were younger. But we've got to be cognizant of the spectrum of use, from a business to a personal to a national.
Well, this is getting more robust all the time. I thought it would just be this and that, and that's what's so great about these spontaneous shows, is they kind of go wherever the last person took it, which then gives somebody a springboard to continue to take quality aspects out. But before I switch it over to Bill, let me recognize Leslie Flowers. If you don't know Leslie, you should. I've done at least 50 shows with Leslie. Used to be a regular on Saturdays together. Leslie has 2 shows of her own, Mind Over Matter on Mondays, and Think and Grow Rich on Fridays. The first one's an audio event. The next one is a live stream. Leslie's just a quality individual. Actually, one of her claims to fame is helping fly Vietnamese soldiers over in 1967 and helping them out. So very, very strong recommendation to Leslie. She thinks it sounds like 1984 and wants to put a shout out to All and Kelly. So thank you, Leslie. I know Leslie was talking about possibly coming to Boulder to meet me and Ann. So if you're ever in the neighborhood, Leslie, always glad to catch a bite. So, kind of moving it towards more the civilian, everyday element. How can a person who is just a novice or whatever take advantage of drone technology? I know not so much for security or for investigation, I guess more for entertainment. What can they expect, probably, Bill?
Well, again, I think there's a very important point here that as we're talking through this and fully absorbed in our discussion here, that's extremely important. It's incumbent on us as global citizens, as community, citizens, to understand what the technology is, what it's doing, how it's being used, what its impact is on whatever metric we want to focus on. And I really, really admire Dave for raising this awareness, like in a forum like we're doing today, because it's only through that dialogue, it's only through that engagement will we be able to see, the continued direction that these things are going on. And that's a necessary discussion. And the hardest thing in the world is to take a complex science or engineering, I'm going to say, system, and begin to try and put that in words like we're trying to do informally right now to be able to convey important concepts. And again, I have to take my hat off, which is off, to Donald, who's wearing his hat, for providing this forum. It was just, I would have never in many, many lifetimes ever come up with such a creative approach to communication as you're doing right here. In direct response to your question, the good news is like in any, if you want to look at it from an economic point of view, in any nascent type activity, industry, you have people that are coming together. They're creating events to come together. And these are very accessible. So it'd be like maybe, or the one that I could cite right now that we have been encouraging and sponsoring would be would be uasgeoscience.org. Now, that's going to be very detailed with respect to what the program content is, but we're doing this, we leverage partnerships. So there's very little to have an impact, except from a medium like this that we're experimenting with 2, 3, 4 people. It's very challenging for us to have a larger impact. And Donald and Dave are opening us up to maybe hundreds, a factor of 100, maybe a factor of 1,000 as they can measure these things. And that's something we just had to wake up and think that's an opportunity. We shouldn't be. And so this one is uasgeoscience.org. And you'll be able to look at the information on that. Our partnership that we're leveraging there would be the Colorado State Universities. They have all different types of aviation aspects of it, but be the drone center up there. And so this will be coming up in a few weeks in September and October. But that'll give you a flavor of that. And we're doing 3 of those, one in the fall. We do one in the spring in Arizona for that region of the country and there. And then we already have a collaboration with what's referred to as energy robotics and drones systems. They do it in Houston. Now, 3 years ago, we were not participating in those types of things. Through those partnerships, we have opened up by a factor of 100 to 200, the types of dialogues we get. And all of a sudden, we perceive, rightly or wrongly, that we're becoming a go-to center where people want to come ask us questions like we're talking about today. And then, that's something that we will happily facilitate. And we just pass those requests on to the right people. We're not the experts in everything here, but we can tell you about what we've done and where we're focused. But this is just a tremendous opportunity for learning and using. And Dave's clearly an advocate of using it, for the good here and everything like that. So.
Well, that's great, Dave.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. I'm not an artistic guy at all, but as I've had to start taking videos of my subjects, I've been using my camera more, and I'm using iMovie. So how can people use drones a little bit more effectively? They can make movies of their own.
Yes.
They can get shots that they couldn't get like I can and put it into a thematic scenario to say this is a story. Panoramic view of, so you can get that continuous shot.
Yes.
Without having to cut back and forth. You can I've got the camera moving entirely. And I was reminded, just from Don, you've brought up many times during our shows that I run marathons, and I've always wondered about my gait and how am I focused on the right step form of body mechanics. And I was reminded, as you were talking, Bill, of a lady who she does Instagram videos. She runs marathons also. I'm a slow runner. I just do it for my mental health. She does it for like she's winning podiums for her age group. But there's one that you can actually set up to go in front of you or behind you. And it goes like, call it 5 feet behind you at a certain height you set it for. You let it out of your hand, it goes, and you start running, and it'll just follow your phone. And it'll record the entire time, I'm assuming, back to your phone. And then you can review it after the fact. Or you can make from there, okay, well, I've got this great video. I've studied my gait. My mechanics need to change. But now I have, and I'm not advocating, I'm not a big fan of influencers. But for those people that are, they can say, I now have content. I have something I can provide to somebody that maybe they can learn from my mistakes. So there's many, many, positives that can come out of it for people's interests on a personal level, whether it's videoing for artistic value, for influencer value, whatever our cultures become with that, I'm not going to argue. There's a lot of good uses to your point there, Don. Your question was, how could the general public use these things? Again, up to your imagination, for fun, even if it's just to get a family photo from a different angle, that could be used. And I'm thinking also, I live in Virginia Beach, and we have whale watching tours. And believe it or not, we do get some right whales very close to the shore here, beyond, before the horizon from shore. And if I'm out on a boat and I want to get an overhead shot, see something more natural from a different perspective, in real time, not something I'm showing 6 months later on YouTube, I can see it. So in a lot of fascinating ways, and that's not even to get into underwater drones. I mean, as a scuba diver, I haven't done it in a couple of years. I'm fascinated with the undersea world, but imagine how we can use them underwater as well.
Yeah, it's just a whole new frontier that we're starting to expand into. And, I think what you and Bill had just mentioned kind of flips it towards people realizing that it has personalized application, right? It's not just some instrument that is beyond their ability to leverage. And I think the importance, and I think Bill pointed it out, is there's so many people like ourselves, me and Dave, and so many others who have an interest, but don't have a hub to attract themselves to with expert or at least knowledgeable individuals who will drive the conversation. It's not so much what we know, it's what we allow to generate to transmit out there to what everybody can know. And everybody can ratchet up together with each other. I do believe the future of benefit and value is peer-to-peer. The one person talking to the person next to them or influencing the people around them. And, anytime you combine two circles, each circle gets bigger, right? And I think, it's efficiency is what we're really driving here. I mean, we talked about miniaturization, right? We talk about all these advances. And I think, when we can work together to share the knowledge, what Bill did, now Dave is learning what Dave is thinking, Bill is starting to integrate into his thoughts. And again, I point to Harvey and Carl as having niche shows. I mean, and Harvey shares it himself. He is like the franchise person, the franchise. So he's only been in 11 months. He's far from any, and what it says is no one really cares how much you know. It's really what you can offer people so they can know more. What you do helps other people do what they should be doing. And also it creates a forum for experts who can come on and feel comfortable that, hey, I'm going to be talking in an environment that's empowering, motivating, inspiring. They say the only three things you can do on a live stream of value is inspire, educate, or entertain, or a combination of all three. And some people are here just to learn, not ever to do. Some people are here to laugh and enjoy the moment. And hopefully that transfers into it, because wherever you come from that's what you're taking with you to your next person or situation. And if your imagination expands, hope shows up, right? When all of a sudden options materialize that you never even knew existed, and you can take advantage of what you do know and apply it, like Bill said, through collaboration. And I think, certain people take responsibility for certain aspects, but unless they filled the circle, it wouldn't be as effective or as efficient. So, looking forward to creating more niche shows, because what that also does is it pre-filters, right? It's not a surprise. Oh, they're talking about drones. Well, yeah, it's the drone show, and that would tell people, if you're not interested in drones, or you're better off moving to another show. That's different. The other part, though, that I'm really proud of is the formatting, the inclusion of the audience, the round robin, everybody gets to talk. And I think that's so important, because everybody has a voice, but not everybody has a platform. And a lot of people, especially as you get older, get marginalized, right? And LinkedIn Live has brought it back. I say this all the time, 82% of the people on LinkedIn are between 18 and 34. How many people are 50? How many people are 60? It gets smaller, right? But the funny thing about this show, everybody who shows up is over 60 or 50 because they need a place that they can talk to people and have experiences, have memories, have backgrounds. I mean, I know, Dave, with all your experience in the Navy, that gives you reference and context for what you do and all the things you learned. So I'll move it real quick back to Dave. How would that have helped you in your naval career if you had the drones we have today? What would have been different?
Well, I would have gotten intel faster. I would have gotten intelligence, maybe more directly. And at the same time, Don, I got to be honest with you, as I alluded to earlier, drones are more than these little, handheld controlled ones. I've had dealings with drones writ large with predators for 25, 30 years. So, I haven't been directly playing with them or controlling them. But look, I mean, I can recall having not personal control, but having given intelligence that said, hey, you need to find this guy and he's going to be on this road. And we had coverage from Baghdad to Syria with multiple drones covering the air. Drones give us, from the military side, I'm a little bit different. I never really, other than predators and other UAVs like that, I never had the need for the smaller ones to get me closer, because I was either on a ship as a surface warfare officer, or I was back at a operations center in the desert, or back at the, in the rear with the gear, as we used to say, with no fear, either at a headquarters or an agency staff. So, but I'm kind of dancing around the fact that I've played with the big ones in the sense that I've gotten the intel from them. So I don't know that the little ones would have given me anything more than what I needed from a professional standpoint that I can experience based on the intelligence requirements I had, because the coverage I had was so broad. So long way of saying I'm not sure.
Well, actually, you created a wonderful, entertaining segment because, there's a saying, facts tell, stories sell, right? No one really cares about the numbers. They want to hear about what's your story and how do you relate to it. And, Bill, how would you have affected your career if drones like they are today would have been available earlier?
Well, that's
it's a tough question.
Well, it's a tough question, and I'm 73. Okay. But if I had the drones when I was giving you the story about the PBY, when I was in my teens, I think there would have been tremendous opportunity to apply it to more situations that, in the least, could have been more economically advantageous to myself. So it's an opportunity that not the right time, the right place in terms of I coming through with this focus on drones per se as an individual. And that's different than the large institutions and organizations that Dave speaks from knowledge with. And so that's the personal dimension there. But having said that, I think right now what I feel very good about is I feel like I'm giving something back for all the opportunities and the travels and the journeys that I've been on. Again, back to our communities. And so Don has enabled me to meet many of the communities and networks that David and Don participate in. And that dimension of returning to networks, I bring a lot to the table through the many, many networks of hundreds of thousands of people that we've been engaged with. And I learned something from a very great professor who's still living here in the Houston area, a gentleman named Fred Hillerman, very renowned in his field. But he made a point that, when you're focused on one particular subject and something, regardless of what the topic is, he said, always go to the edges of it, always go to the boundary of it and look at, where it's overlapping, touching, integrating, or whatever. And he says, take a hard look at that. And it's that theme of integration. And that is tremendous opportunity, regardless whether it's in concept and thought, whether it's in academic discipline and focus, whether it's an application in terms of a business application. and today, my personal opinion is because our economy is so focused on a transaction, there's a lot of fragmentation if you start to get into the economic aspects of it. And that's an opportunity space where you start to see opportunities for integration. And that's going to be beneficial. I can demonstrate now with examples and going forward. And the queries we get, a few months ago, we had a query from New Zealand, and it was an agriculture gentleman. And what he was, he used drones to monitor his large herds, methane gas. Unfortunately, that's something we can help on. But it's just, who would have ever expected a call from New Zealand to look at this? We've had, from agriculturalists in terms of their vineyards that they're growing in the soil conditions. They want to know how much water there is in the soil. Can you do that? Sure enough. And this is just it's just the beginning of many of these types of applications. The water dimension that Dave just is so important, where people, particularly if they just want to go to the beach and have fun, can they go in the water? Is it going to be safe? And so it's just areas where, again, the continued opportunity for technology, and we need to attract more young people into these fields. There's just a real diminishment of students that are going into these fields, and at a time when we need more and more. And they call that, the broad labels that we use on a global basis are STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So hopefully this is an attraction. So
I think we lost Don, but I think we can keep going. We got 8 minutes left.
Okay.
It's a bigger issue than just wanting to do it for fun. To your point, having an educational, I don't like getting into, we got to have a new policy for this. We got to have a new strategy for this as a whole. Yeah. It's a piece of a greater strategy that should be incorporated into a national focus or broad national strategic vision for where we're going to go. And STEM drives into the uses of technologies to include drones. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah. And I think, Dave, again, I so much appreciate having the opportunity to be with you today.
Yeah.
Because you put into words.
It's reciprocal.
So we're not going to see governments are going to make this happen. And so I think the excitement of this medium of the live streaming is we're reaching out to anybody that's interested, the you, if you will, and you have it within your time and energy and resources that if you want to investigate this or learn more about this or get thoroughly involved in it. And that's where it should be. That's the way that more people are going to come into that, I think.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the marketing aspect of it, which Dave has some great experience from, and Donald and some of their colleagues that they were speaking of, it's going to be that pull that's going to allow some of these opportunities here. So then that just kind of makes it very important, the message that we're delivering. How do we set the stage for that? And I interrupted you. I think you were going to say something.
No. I have the tendency to interrupt. I didn't have anything at this point. But at the same time, I think we have great opportunity to use the technology in so many different ways. And we've gotten into AI, but imagine using quantum computers to maintain these things up in the air indefinitely through signals. And I mean, just again, I look to the imagination is where we're limited in everything we do in our life. Everybody wants to find a way to know, yet drones give us an opportunity to find a way to yes. What are the possibilities? What are the ultimate potentials of the technology? And to your point earlier on the triangle, the payload versus sensor are very important because the more we get into the technical aspects of it, yes, we funnel out a lot of people because they're not going to grasp how to miniaturize it. They're not going to grasp or have the manufacturing ability. It's a very narrow niche that we get to. And yet, as soon as you pointed out, the barriers to entry start to broaden out as we do more of it. That imagination can be taken further because we found new ways. I love the way that Disney, pulling off the Chinese. God help me, I'm not a Chinophile by any, well, not a China fan by many stretches, but the way they used it, and now Disney's using it to tell a story, using the imagination, the technology, because of that barrier to entry being removed, because well, for them at least, because they've got the money. Imagine how we can use it in storytelling again in my neighborhood.
I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and I think I wish Donald was here, because I'm just learning how all this works. I do get to see some of the comments by our group, and
oh yeah, I don't know how to do that either.
Imagination is the workshop of the mind here. So
Yeah.
Dave, you struck a chord there, I think.
Yeah, and Leslie is a great resource. I love reading her stuff, and I haven't been able to watch many of her shows, but the times I have, they've been phenomenal. She's a wonderful person. And if I may, just real quick, Leslie, I'd forgotten that you were taking soldiers in and out of Vietnam. Thank you for your service. Some of the angels that took guys in and out of there were just memorable to so many service members that I heard about through my 20 years plus in the Navy. Both soldiers, airmen, Marines that I've worked with. So thank you, Leslie.
Leslie again said, and this is an invitation to check her out, is one of the 13 principles of success. So Don's been struck in Colorado. I lost my internet on my phone, listening, doing great.
Thank you, Don. He's taught us well over the years, I guess, on how to do these things and just keep conversations going.
So we're within a minute or two. I just really interrupted.
No, I was just about to say the same thing. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and what Don usually does here is say, what are your last thoughts, Bill?
Okay, my last thoughts were, again, to thank all of you, and to thank Dave, and to thank Don for the opportunity to participate in this. Each time now that I'm having this experience, I'm more and more persuaded of the value of its time well spent. And the particular format that Donald uses here is very, very compelling. It's very, very powerful, very good. But please, the drone show will be continuing. There should be another opportunity to do this. I'll be reaching out to Dave again to help participate, and we'll have a specific related topics, but we'll capture any of your ideas and suggestions as well. So I'm going to say thank you and turn it over to Dave for the conclusion.
Oh, yeah. Well, I always like to thank Don for the opportunity, or at least if I haven't said it out loud, I do mean to. But Bill, this has been a very informative, other perspective on the geophysics side, as you point out.
It's about the Earth.
Leslie says that we found Don's ejector seat, but he's a real driver of the show, and appreciate him having these opportunities. Bill, we've just met here virtually. I've been coming on Don's shows since September of last year, and it was kind of just I wasn't really sure what to expect. And then he invited me to come on more frequently, and it's become a regular thing now. And I appreciate Don for that. And I appreciate everybody's comments. Leslie, Kelly, who I've come to know very well personally, and Carrie always has a joke of the day and always something positive to lighten the mood. So hopefully this has been, educational, informative, and people are getting something out of it. But I think in two broad strokes is imagination and technology converging is what drones are doing.
Well, with that, we're going to hit our leave buttons. We salute all of you. We salute Dave for your service, Leslie, all your contributions, and he mentioned all the other colleagues that are on the line there. So it's been a real pleasure, and we look forward to engaging with all of you soon. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.